You're listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch movies and TV about, like, how everyone's a bully, I guess?
Yeah, everybody kind of sucks and is mean to people, and yeah. I mean, I'm Jodie.
Oh, I'm Andrea.
And we watched Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah. We watched Meanies and Bullies.
Meanies and Bullies. Yeah. And it gets worse. I know we're talking only about the pilot.
Hashtag it gets worse.
It gets worse, yeah. It does. This was interesting. We talked about this last week. I have seen this pilot a couple of times, and I couldn't remember how far I'd gotten into the series, but I knew I watched more than just the pilot. And yesterday when I was looking through the episode recaps past the pilot, I realized I had gotten pretty far into the series. I don't know exactly when I stopped. I might have even watched the whole thing, although I doubt it. But I definitely have watched multiple episodes because I recognized scenes and stuff from later episodes. But this was an interesting one. I want to love this show so much.
Well, especially because, like you said, it seems like everybody compares it to My So-Called Life.
Yeah.
In a way, right? Like,
yeah.
And I mean, we'll get into it, but I feel like if we had merch, it would be a t-shirt that says, we'll get into it.
Yeah.
But I don't always need, just because something feels accurate doesn't necessarily make it necessary. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to me this felt like it was quoting from all of the other things we've talked about, but like and they weren't stars at the time, so that's I was gonna say with bigger stars, but like most of these people were unknowns at the time. But like just sort of like with a polish on them or amped up or with like a certain color cast, like it felt kind of expected. I don't know.
Yeah. I was trying to put myself in a place as the most generous viewer of this show where it's like, what if I were 13 or 14 years old watching this when it first aired? And I don't know. In the way that, like I said last week, if that were true for My So-Called Life, I know I would have been obsessed with it.
Definitely.
I don't feel that way about this.
I think I would have been pretty into it only for the representation at the time of someone like Lindsay, in that, like, it's, you know, she's always compared to Angela Chase in My So-Called Life, I think just because of the focus on her and the plot line of like her leaving behind an older friend group or older nerdy friend to join a different group.
By far the most compelling and watchable part of this show. Yeah.
But I also think that it feels to me, and it's just the pilot, so, that's
a really good point.
Yeah, because I do know that like one of the reasons this show didn't stick around is because it got pretty dark, and NBC was like, we want happy shows. And Judd Apatow was like, okay, no, like, you know, there's a whole episode that didn't air the first run where like there's like Busy Phillips' character, like her parents are abusive, like she's in a really like almost violent relationship with James Franco's character. Like it's real dark at times.
Yeah, I read it. Only 12 of the 19 episodes even aired.
18, yeah, 12 of 18.
12 of 18.
No, 12 of 18 episodes. But yeah, one of the ones that never aired was that one because it was so dark and so Kim Kelly is my friend.
Like, again, I know it can be important to represent things on screen. I agree 100% that we have so many examples of that where it really matters and feels important. And I can't totally put my finger on why I don't feel that way. You know what? Should we get into it? Because I think I do know what it is. It's just it happens much later. Like, it's like at the very end of the episode where I finally like was able to put a pin on what I was struggling with.
Yeah. I want to say real quick while it's in my brain that I think for me, you said something before we started recording that kind of lit up a bulb in my brain where I was like, oh, like this feels like a Judd Apatow show. Which there's nothing wrong with Judd Apatow, but it's like,
I think I said it feels like very male-centered show.
Which is the same thing.
Yeah, but I like a lot of, and I like Judd's stuff in general to a point. It's not...
I just don't connect with it in the same way. That's what it is. It's like, this feels like a bunch of boys specifically who were bullied wanted to make a show where like they got to explore that experience and talk about being an outsider. And like, that's fine.
Men will make an entire TV show instead of going to therapy, you know?
There it is. But it feels like a more like gentle, you know, 90s Revenge of the Nerds or something. Like, yeah. And I know that that's giving it short shrift because there's a lot more to it. And the female characters are a lot more nuanced than something like that. Like Linda Cardellini's character and Busy Phillips, like they're both... In this first episode, Busy Phillips is just a dick, but like she does have a whole backstory and
that might be my real problem because I love
Busy Phillips. I know, it's so funny
so much, but she's a dick through most of Dawson's Creek, and I love her there.
Yeah, no, she definitely. If you keep watching, she has a whole arc, and she does become a really like sympathetic character, like complicated but very sympathetic and very. More nuanced, I guess, than she is in this episode. She's just a jerk in the first episode.
And I do think, like, I'm going to keep coming back to this. Like, high school students are jerks. It's not like it's Freaks and Geeks, right? But it's like, in a way, I do kind of like that everybody's an asshole, you know, except for the main kid.
Yeah.
He's mostly fine, but yeah.
Yeah, he's fine. He's just a nerd. But, and Linda Cardellini's character is basically fine. Like, one of the things that she's
a little misguided through certain things in this episode, but in general.
But she's well-meaning, and you can see that she like cares about her little brother and stuff. But one of the things that I read where it was being compared to My So-Called Life, one of the reasons for that, it's not just the like character of the young girl moving from one social scene to another, but it's also the way the family is treated. The family is much more two-dimensional here, but it's like Linda Cardellini's character, and I don't know if you can really tell this in the first episode, but she does love her parents. Like, it's not that her parents are like complete idiots or abusive or anything. They're well-meaning. They have a nice relationship, but it's just she's a teenager and they're not.
Right. I mean, her dad, like you said, I have to imagine if that's the case that he gets a little more well-rounded because he's such a... Yeah. But I kind of liked... He felt like a dad from like Heathers or Better Off Dead or something where he was like an absolute character in a way that really nobody else is in this show.
Yeah. You know where he is now? Dead. He's dead.
I thought that was fun.
Yeah. I thought it was fun too. It definitely felt like it was from a different, like they're trying to balance a couple different tones in this. And I don't know if they kind of nail that in the pilot. Like there's like, because there's a bit of that Heathers satire going on. There's a little bit of more genuine like affection between, I keep wanting to call her Linda Cardellini, Lindsay and her brother. There's like some sweet moments. Jason Segel's character feels like both a caricature and a very real person that I knew in high school. Like
I think he feels the most real to me a lot of the time. It might just be that he's a better actor than most of the other.
I watched his audition tape yesterday. It's exactly this. He walks in and you can hear people laughing as it's the audition scene is the drum kit moment where he's introducing.
Really charming. He always has been. Like
I knew, like, I think that's why I'm like, I want to like this so badly because like that scene where they're all outside on the patio was my high school. That was my whole high school life. Dudes like trying to impress each other and being stupid and like, you know, the girls kind of standing around being like, ugh, whatever, like you're an idiot. And like,
it just doesn't feel unrealistic for the most part. It doesn't, but I just don't know that it's,
I know
I just think it like, I'm torn with how we talk about pilots because I always say like you kind of have to give shows a chance and that like pilots aren't usually that like a show putting its best foot forward even though it's supposed to be, but they're still figuring things out. But we've seen some really stellar ones.
Yeah.
So
and I honestly think as if we think about what a pilot is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to introduce the characters. It's supposed to introduce some questions. It's supposed to give you a sense of the world and make you want to keep coming back, right? I think for the most part, this is a successful pilot for most people. Mm-hmm. I just think that for me, I am comparing it to similar things I like better. And that's why, like, it does do those things as a pilot.
Maybe this is just an instance of, like, something's just, like, not everything is for everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think I'm struggling so much because on paper, it just feels like this should be for me.
I know. This is the complicated feeling I've always had about this show and why, like, it, for a long time, was in my, like, continue watching section on Hulu. I'd gotten through a few episodes and stopped. It's like, and I love the people in it for the most part. You know, I don't know if you watched Dead to Me.
I did watch Dead to Me.
I liked the weird twisted vibe of that show, especially during COVID. And I love Linda Cardellini. I love Busy Phillips. Like, I really think when you said something about how it feels like it's from a male point of view, that was really what nailed it for me. It was like, oh, right, of course. This was, and we've watched other shows that are created by men, but they don't feel so Judd Apatow. They don't feel so like 40-year-old virgin is coming, you know? Yeah.
It's weird too, because again, it does feel like a show made for men by men, but I don't think Linda Cardellini and Busy, to an extent, they don't feel one-dimensional the way that normally when you say something like that, that's usually what you mean. Yeah. They're not like, they're playing high schoolers and they don't feel like they're being objectified in a way that they are in like a Beverly Hills 90210 or something. They feel like kids. And I think that's good.
Even though Busy Phillips was, Linda Cardellini was 23 when this was filmed. But she looked very high school.
Yeah, they all look like kids anyway.
Well, and to that note, like, so the creator, Paul Feig, you know, he based this on his life growing up in the Midwest. A lot of the people were taken directly from people he knew. Lindsay was a creation out of his mind because he'd always wanted an older sister. Oh. And so you can kind of feel the affection in that too. But the thing about not having them be objectified, I think is kind of what saves that, like, this is a show from a male perspective. He told, this was in 99, he told Busy Phillips and Linda Cardellini not to diet. He had hired them because of what they looked like and that they were perfect the way they are. And he wanted to make sure they didn't feel any pressure to be thinner just because that wasn't what he wanted. Yeah, so like it's like a show from a male perspective, but not in the most toxic way that we're used to.
Right.
You know?
Because I think Judd Apatow is fundamentally a good person.
Probably.
By all accounts.
Yeah, like, seems to be.
So I don't think that it's that. Maybe it just really isn't.
Well, and
maybe
was really,
people are going to listen to this and think we're both idiots. I don't know.
Probably, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And it was created by Paul Feig almost out of whole cloth and given to Judd. And so, and he obviously produced and everything. But, you know, the vision originally is really Paul Feig. Like, he wrote this and kind of handed it off to Judd when Judd was like, hey, do you have anything? I have a deal and I need material.
You know what else is funny? My introduction to Paul Feig is I bought years and years ago, just browsing at Barnes & Noble, not realizing who he was. He's got a collection of personal essays called Kick Me.
Oh,
that's all about growing up a weird little kind of bullied kid.
Yeah.
And I love that book. It's literally called Kick Me: Adventures in Adolescence. It's like, it couldn't be more. It's Freaks and Geeks. Like, I just want to read you the written in side-splitting and often cringe-inducing detail. Paul Feig takes you in a time machine to a world of bombardment by dodgeballs, ill-fated prom dates, hellish school bus rides. Like, it's, you know, it was published in 2002 though, so but I love that book. So
right. Yeah, and I mean, he's known for doing a lot of female-centric shows, you know, and movies. He did Bridesmaids, like. Right. So, again, I don't know. And as I heard it referred to yesterday when I was watching some recap thing, the girl Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters with chicks. So, like, yeah, he's definitely not your typical. I think that maybe balanced out a little bit of Judd, especially young Judd's tendencies to really be like doing bro comedy. Like it's in there. But I actually think that Paul Feig, even though he is another white man, like really isn't in that mold.
Right.
And so that helps balance it a little bit. I love the anecdote that he always wanted a big sister, and that's why he created that character. Like that you can kind of feel that in how she's written. But yeah, I want to love this so much more than I do. And I
also think James Franco, and I've always felt this way, is so unappealing. I'm not interested in watching him. I've never found him compelling. I didn't get it even before we knew that he's got his head so far up his own ass that and so.
He's whatever to me in this. Like, if any of the characters, the male characters, are interesting to me at all, it's probably Jason Segel's character. Like, just because he's such a doofus.
Yeah, he's just like a real palate cleanser in general. I really like him.
And like some of my favorite male friends in high school were kind of doofuses.
Yeah,
and like, they're fun to be around, and they're sweet, and they'll do nice things for you, and not be too gross,
right? And
not expect things from you for being nice. Like, you kind of feel like James Franco's character is not that.
Right. And Seth Rogen too. Like, he's such a he's also not great in this as an actor.
This was his first acting job. He'd never acted before.
Tell.
Yeah,
you can really tell.
He had never acted before. He literally like kind of dropped out of high school to do this show.
That's so funny. What about Jason Segel before this? Do you know?
He hadn't done much.
I think he's really good at being himself on screen, is the impression that I get. And but he seems like such a
this was his first major role.
It's cool. It's cool that they did that, because they did get
a lot of people. It was their first thing. Like,
that's cool.
Linda Cardellini had acting experience, but Seth Rogen, Jason Segel, I think even James Franco hadn't done much yet. But a lot of people, it was like their very first thing. Sam Levine, this was his first real.
2 years old, so
I
that
know.
makes sense.
You do know he is our only real Jersey connection. He's from Fort Lee. Which is like...
Is he really our only? Cardellini feels like a Jersey girl to me.
I know, but she's not.
She should be.
It's so upsetting that she isn't.
She really feels like
no,
one. Where is she from?
She is from California.
Oh, wow.
Redwood City.
Huh.
And she is like exactly my age. She's like a few months older than me, and it's really upsetting. But yeah, she's from California. No, Sam Levine grew up in Fort Lee, which... I do not want to judge Sam Levine only on my one interaction with him in person. But he's also hangry. I'm sure he was. Dim sum is not a quick meal. But also I hear him on Doug Loves Movies all the time, and he is pretty much that person. Which is I think a genuinely nice person, but like prickly.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you just described everybody I love in New Jersey.
Fair. Yeah. Should I just tell the Sam Levine story real quick?
If you want.
It's not a very interesting story, but I moved to LA in 2012 with my ex. I had a friend living out there who somehow knew a bunch of semi-famous people, and she invited me to dim sum. And so I had dim sum with like her, Ben Acker, Sam Levine, and probably a couple of other people that are like on the periphery of that.
That you just don't know.
That I don't remember at this point, because it was like 12 years ago.
Judd Apatow.
Yeah, it was Judd Apatow. Jason Segel.
Uh-huh.
But this was 2012. So I was making conversation. I was brand new to LA. I didn't know anyone. And I asked Sam, what do you do? And he just looked at me.
That's a perfectly fine question.
And went, I'm an actor. And I was like, in that tone.
Maybe what he was saying was, oh God, now I have to tell somebody. It's like when people ask me what I do and I have to be like, do I say that I'm a podcast producer?
I will say
what is the conversation going to be?
But the vibe definitely was like, oh God, you don't know who I am. Like that was the vibe I got from him. I could be projecting. I 100% admit it. But it sounded like a defensive sort of B C-list actor being like, I was on a really popular show, you fucking idiot. Like,
It's so funny. You've told me this story before, and I didn't know. I don't think I knew he was from Jersey until now, and I didn't reframes it totally for me.
I know. I'm actually a little bit more forgiving of him knowing that he's from Fort Lee. Then there was the New Year's Eve party that I went to that Ryder Strong and his wife hosted, and that's a whole other...
That I can't talk about. I can't handle that. That's a different thing.
Which is so funny. When we get into these like later teen shows that I have no connection to, that is why when I met him, I was like, you were on some show. Sure. Okay. That I never watched. He was nice to me. His wife was super nice.
I can't talk about this.
Okay.
You must understand.
We'll move on.
This hurts me.
Yeah. We'll move on. So yeah, should we do the little, the facts?
Yeah.
Created by Paul Feig, 1999 to 2000, 18 episodes, only 12 aired originally. Produced by Judd Apatow. This episode was directed by Jake Kasdan. He ended up working on things like New Girl later on. Part of the reason it was canceled, most people believe, is because the original airtime was 8 p.m. on Saturday, which, if you're trying to appeal to teenagers, is probably not the best time to put on a TV show.
Do you think they thought, well, the kids
the losers
are
home.
This show.
Yes, I'm sure that's maybe what they thought. But also, it was scheduled really poorly. So, they had 2 episodes air back to back, week to week, and then it went on hiatus because of the World Series for several weeks. And then it returned for a few episodes, was pulled again for the holidays, and then kept coming back sporadically until they just kind of gave up on it. After it was canceled, MTV was kind of interested in picking it up, but the budget would have been much, much lower, and they couldn't have done a lot of the stuff they wanted to, so they passed on it. A lot of the people involved think that a big part of why it didn't get the promotion or the time slot that it deserved was because NBC had just gotten a new exec named Garth Ancier, who just didn't get the show. He wasn't necessarily a bad person, but he just kept wanting it to be more palatable, more happy, more nice endings for people. And Judd was like, no. There's also a stat that during the first episode, so the first episode got a decent rating share, especially for a Saturday night at 8. The second episode, the viewership dropped by half.
Whoa.
And they had access to the minute by minute Nielsen data. And apparently after the scene where Eli falls and breaks his arm when he's running away, half the people watching turned it off.
It's so...
I know.
I don't know how to talk about this. Are we... Well, but
yeah.
We got to put a pin in Eli. I need to talk about...
Right. So should we talk a little bit about the cast and then people we haven't mentioned so far, and then get into it? Martin Starr, we've kind of just touched on. Did you watch Silicon Valley?
I watched the first season.
Yeah. It's another one of those very male centric bro comedies, even though it's about a bunch of nerds.
I think half that cast is canceled at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Not surprisingly. Who else? Oh, we've got Becky Ann Baker as the mom, who I know as Hannah's mom in Girls, which we've talked about the fact that you didn't really get into. Her Linda and Sam's dad, Harold, is played by Joe Flaherty. He was an SCTV writer and performer, Second City alum.
Yeah, he's one of those guys.
He just died this April, sadly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Busy Phillips, who we love. John Francis Daly, who played Sam.
Busy did one of my podcasts, not that I host, one that I produce, and she was so nice. It made me so happy. We can balance out the Sam Levine. But she was great.
And I don't want to make it sound like I have a vendetta against Sam Levine. I had one interaction with him that was awkward, and I probably misread. But
you can tell us all how much you hate Sam Levine.
I don't hate Sam Levine.
Life's mission to...
I appreciate his love of trivia.
There you go.
John Francis Daly as Sam was later on Bones, and now is more on the production, writing, directing side of things. One thing that I just want to shout out Busy Phillips for She is a really strong advocate for pro-choice causes. Mm-hmm. And she has like testified before the House Judiciary Committee defending women's right to choose. She came out about her own abortion when she was 15, just to kind of encourage other women to talk about it. So we love Busy Phillips in this house for multiple reasons.
That's right.
Ben Foster, the actor that played Eli. The only thing I want to mention about him right now before we talk about Eli, he's apparently married to Laura Prepon. I never know how to pronounce that last name.
Oh, I didn't know they were married. I love her.
I love her.
Yeah, obviously. You're not.
I am a human. I love her. When I found out he was married to her, I decided I hated him even more.
I don't. It's not his. I have to say.
No, I know.
I know Ben Foster from. I was huge into the X-Men franchise early on.
Okay.
I don't give a shit about those movies anymore, but I know him from the X-Men movies, and then also from one of my guilty pleasure movies. Have you ever seen Alpha Dog?
No.
Oh boy, it's not good.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good.
It's not great. It's Justin Timberlake, Ben Foster. It's
Justin Timberlake?
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Alpha Dog. Okay.
But yeah.
And then we've got Sarah Hagen as the ditched friend, Millie Kentner. Was in Buffy in the last season, apparently.
Don't
I know.
Apparently.
I know.
She's Amanda. You watch your mouth. R.I.P.
Tom Wilson as the coach, also known as Biff Tannen.
I know.
From Back to the Future. I saw an interview with him where he said he could play a high school coach in his sleep. It's like the thing that is the easiest for him.
Have you heard the Biff Tannen song? Mm-mm. About, hold on. It's going to have to go here in the episode.
When I'm flying in a plane or I'm on the street, there's a lot of friendly people that I like to meet. They shake my hand but never ask my name, and they start asking questions that are always the same. Hey, what's Michael J. Fox like? He's nice. What's Christopher Lloyd like? Kinda quiet. What's Crispin Glover like? Unusual. Stop asking me the question. I went to the bar mitzvah of my nephew Josh. Now I'm not Jewish, but I like to nosh. Put on my yarmulke, started to pray. When the rabbi leaned over and I heard him say, hey, was that real manure? No, it wasn't. How was that DeLorean? A piece of garbage. Do those hoverboards really fly? It's a movie. Stop asking me the question. Can we take your picture? Come on, look mean. Would you call my friend a butthead on his answering machine? Questions fill my head. I went to my doctor said, what does a key grip do? Set up lights. What does the best boy do? Help the key grip. What does a producer do? I don't know. Stop asking me the question. Do you all hang out together? No, we don't. How's Crispin Glover? I never talked to him. Back to the Future 4. Not happening. Stop asking me the question. Hey, who's the nicest famous guy? You know, Adam Sandler. Who is the biggest jerk? Gary Busey. How much money do you make? More than you do. So stop asking me the question.
His bio is wild. It talks about what he's known for, and then it says, Wilson is a devout Catholic and released a contemporary Christian album in 2000 called In the Name of the Father. He's also a painter in his spare time, and many of his paintings focus on classic children's toys. Like, what?
It's a strange seems bio. Like a very interesting guy. He's the inclusion of Biff Tannen in this show. Mm-hmm. It feels like I can feel all of these people sitting around in a room together and being like, it should feel like a love letter to the 80s. Like, I want it to be Dazed and Confused, but for the 80s. And it just doesn't quite get there for me. But anyway, like he's one of the things where I was like, I get, like, I'm seeing what they're trying to do.
She's not in the pilot, but Ann Dowd does show up, of course. Ann Dowd plays Kim Kelly, Busy Phillips' mom.
Okay. Oh.
So she's not very nice in this. Lizzie Kaplan shows up later on. Shia LaBeouf shows up. Leslie Mann, Ben Stiller, Jason Schwartzman, all in small parts.
I'm like tired.
I know. I do. I do. Yeah.
And I know it's not early for Ben Stiller, but and for a couple of those other names you said, but it is like there's also that, like, a lot of these people, I feel like, even I've said 100 times, it sounds like I'm a way bigger fan of Jason Segel than I am with how often I've mentioned him so far in this recording.
But it's in comparison to like Shia LaBeouf and
some of these people
James
are just
Franco.
people I never need to see again on screen.
Yes, exactly.
And I think maybe I wouldn't have felt that way.
Yeah.
20 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know that we need to do like a beat by beat recap on this episode. I think maybe just talking about like the different characters and scenes kind of, there's some lines that are really fun, but I don't think it's necessarily. No, I
don't think so.
Necessary.
Sam Weir is getting bullied.
Mm-hmm. His sister sticks up for him a lot.
She's trying to reinvent herself.
Yeah.
A la Angela Chase.
But I think the interesting thing is, like, the fact that she just watched her grandmother die is a much bigger deal to the creators of this show than I think it comes through in the pilot. Like, when they're asked to describe, like, what the plot of the pilot is, they often seem to start with this young woman who has lost faith. She literally watched her grandmother die, and like her grandmother said, there's nothing. And now she just like wants to drop out of society. That connection is not clear to me in the show.
She just kind of feels like a teenage girl to me, which is fine. I kind of like that it's not.
Yeah. But according to the people who made this, that is a big part of the motivating factor for her, all of the changes she's going through.
Huh. Do you think they think women can only change if they suffer some real trauma?
Probably.
That it's not just like, I don't know, man. Girls in high school, we're working through a lot of stuff no matter what.
Exactly. Yeah, no, apparently it was really supposed to be predicated on the death of her grandmother.
So funny.
I know.
I forgot that was even a thing, like, until you said that. I was like, the what?
Yeah. Their parents seem fine. They want them to be more normal teenagers than they are.
Right. I would too if they were my kids.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. There's this like group of freaks that she decides to try to get herself in with. Apparently she's already friends with James Franco, which is never explained. And he kind of brings her in. And the one really resistant person is Kim Kelly, aka Busy Phillips.
Which is, there's like some truth to that, especially with
there can only be one cool girl.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're the cool girl, you don't want a new cool girl coming in.
Right.
Like that. Obviously, I'm saying that sarcastically because that is the toxic nature of the way they pit women against each other. But
that is like, it's a very, well, for the most part, it's clear that that's where her defensiveness and meanness comes from, except she's so nasty to Sam and it feels so unnecessary.
I know.
That's what I mean. Like, why is everybody so mean in this show?
I mean, I think we have definitely talked about the fact that like my experience of bullying culture was much closer to this than yours was. Like, this is not that far off.
No, I'm not saying it's unrealistic. I just don't know. Do you feel better for having seen that represented on this screen? Like,
I mean, I definitely had a desire to see nerdy characters succeed. And so like when Sam doesn't show up for the fight with Alan, but the three guys that are there team up and chase him off eventually, I did enjoy that quite a bit. Just because it's like, it's nice to see them stand up for themselves. I also really related to when Sam Levine's character talks about how he is not going to necessarily stand up for Sam because then that's going to put the target on him. Like, that's a very clear, like, very realistic view of what it's like to be in that little hierarchy at the bottom. Like, you want to just stay off of the very bottom.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That felt fine to me. Like, it really is the, like, I think maybe it's busy. It really, like, I was really just, I don't know, bothered by it.
And I think that's the pilot of it all. Like, I think in the pilot, they are setting this up so that they can mess with it and so they can complicate it, but they're laying the table or setting the table or laying the groundwork or whatever. They're laying the table. They're setting us up to, like, see her as one thing and then transform her or give her more depth.
Okay. You're getting to the crux of it for me.
Okay.
Because it's like the stuff with Eli, where it's like we're supposed to have this big, beautiful moment at the end because she dances with him at the...
Yeah.
But it's like, you could have just not done all of that. Like, it just feels so unnecessary and it's not actually doing anything. Like, I don't know what message they think they're sending. I don't know what the point is for any of that. And that's sort of how I feel with the Busy thing too, where it's like, or you could have just let her be a complicated person from the, you know, like,
yeah,
I think it's just, you know, it feels...
There's only so much space in a pilot though. Like, I think that
it feels unsophisticated to me.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
It feels like a lot of it feels like freshman creative writing class, like a college freshman creative writing class. That's what this pilot feels like to me.
I mean, this was early in Paul Feig's career, you know, also early in Judd's career. They were pretty young when they did this. And so that does kind of make sense. I am less bothered by Busy Phillips being kind of a bitch because I do remember the later episodes where she has a lot more to do and a lot more depth. And also the general arc between her and Lindsay, like they are brought together in this. And so that part of it, I think, helps me not be so bothered. I am bothered by the Eli thing though.
It's funny because My So-Called Life and Beverly Hills 90210 both, we've commented on, like, oh, you know, like, you expect when somebody is like being brought into a new group, like the other girls to be mean to them. And it's so nice that they're not in these two. And now we get, this is exactly what I was talking about in those other two of not wanting to see. And so maybe that's part of it too. We have such good examples of how you don't have to write women.
You don't have to play into expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this definitely plays into expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Constantly.
And I think maybe I'm just bored by that.
Yeah. That makes sense. It definitely, there's nothing really unexpected in this for me. And it might just be that it's not 1999 anymore. And like at the time, this was much more rare.
It reminds me of that. I've maybe talked about this on the podcast before, but everybody will know what I'm talking about. On The Office, when Michael's like, picture a convict.
Yeah.
And then he's like, you know, he says, what's up, my shizzle?
Right.
And then, you know, what did you picture? Well, you're wrong. It's a white woman. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like.
Well, yeah. And it's a little bit of the like, is this a retread of a lot of classic tropes, or is this in 1999 the reason that we now think about this as a classic trope is because so many things copied this,
right you know, and that's possible too.
And I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, this is 99. Heathers, My So-Called Life, Beverly Hills 90210, all the stuff we've talked about was before this.
I mean, Dawson's Creek is already a couple of seasons in at this point, I think.
Like, well, and a lot of the reason I think for this existing in the way that it does is against some of the things we've talked about, like not against My So-Called Life necessarily, but it was referred to as the anti-90210. Like the creators wanted to show the people that aren't typically shown in things like the Dawson's Creek and, you know, the burnouts and the, you know, the nerdy folks. So like it was created in opposition to a lot of the sort of current culture. But also I think, you know, I keep coming back to Revenge of the Nerds, like, or Weird Science. I almost said Real Genius. Weird Science, right? Like, but Real Genius also, Mitch, like this type of nerdy kid, nerdy boy specifically, has been exhausted in my mind by 1999.
I think so too.
And so what's new about this is that the female characters actually get something to do. And that's what saves it.
I am surprised by how much I liked. I mean, not that surprised because I really like Linda Cardellini, but I mean, like, I do think they did a good job writing writing her.
And it gets better from the first episode. Like, they get more and more to do, especially Busy Phillips. So
that's cool. I do like that.
Yeah, but the young male characters, I think, are what really fall flat for me. They're like, yeah, okay, of course, Sam Levine's character is talking about Star Trek and imitating William Shatner, which apparently is what got him the job, that imitation.
Oh, funny.
I've seen interviews with, I think it was with Judd, that said that Sam Levine's audition tape was like one of the worst auditions he's ever seen. But then he did the William Shatner impression at the end.
That's funny, and it saved him.
It ended up, he auditioned for the main character, and he didn't get that, but they decided that they liked his little Star Trek nerd bit at the end.
That's funny.
I mean, there's some really, like, sort of incisive things here, like all of the, I'm sure I've seen this before, but all of the boys being so small and all of the girls their age being, like, significantly taller.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like, it reminded me of our 8th grade class photo where, like, all the boys are still real tiny and all the girls are, like, shooting up.
And that stark contrast between the tiny little freshman boys and the seniors who start to look like grown people.
But even between Sam and his crush, who I keep thinking of as Winnie Cooper, even though she's not Winnie Cooper, Cindy Sanders, same thing. Winnie Cooper, Cindy Sanders, yeah. But, like, she is supposedly around his age in his grade, and she is, like, a foot taller than him. So this is very Wonder Years coded also.
Oh,
that
totally,
piece of it.
I like that she's not, like, set up to be an asshole.
Right.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
She's just...
Well, that's the thing that they're not doing with the Mean Girls part of it. They're, like, subverting expectations of the, like, mean cheerleader he has a crush on. Actually, the cheerleader kind of likes him, you know? She thinks he's sweet. The clothes are spot on. Like,
the show's so beige.
It's literally, I know I always talk about color casts and stuff like that nobody cares about, but
people care.
Sure. But literally it's mentioned in the reviews of this show how, like, specific the color casts are.
You can totally, the 1980 versus if this were set in 1989. What it would look
God.
Like. You can
that would
totally,
be so different.
Yeah. It's also, I'm sorry, this is a show filmed in 1999, set in 1980. Is there one person of color on this screen ever?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think
there's even a background character who isn't white.
Yeah.
Like, there's no excuse. In 1999, there's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for that ever. I'm not saying we can excuse racism, but I draw the line. But it's
it is
striking.
It is striking.
White the show is.
I mean, at least in 90210, they had a slightly racist black DJ character.
Like, something. And they're, like, outside Detroit. They're not living somewhere where it's like,
they're in Michigan.
You know, it is a predominantly white city where, like,
yeah, that's true.
There's just it's
extremely white.
Yeah. Again, the show is so beige.
It's also very gray and green. I think that's not to argue color palettes with you, but I think
that's all to say. It's all very neutral.
Yeah, it's got like a greenish cast to it. Also, not like not
verdant,
not post-apocalyptic green, but drab, like the green of her dad's army jacket that she wears.
It's spiritually beige. I understand there's more than one color on the show. It just, all of it feels so like...
Oh, here, I found what I was looking for to talk about that. There was an article in Mental Floss that talks about, like, where it takes place, a suburb of Detroit, fictional Chippewa, Michigan. It says the crew used green and gray tinted lights to achieve so-called Midwestern colors on the show's set in California. So that's also part of it. Like, they're shooting in California and trying to make it look like Michigan.
Right.
They tried to avoid shooting outside. They used, like, tinted lights to try to make it look more quote-unquote Midwestern. And so that's also the gray and beige of it all. It's not just the time frame, but, like, location, too. So
yeah, it's got like visually, it's got a little more in common with My So-Called Life that way than like Beverly Hills 90210 or
definitely,
or The Creek when we get there.
The Creek, It has like all of the classic teen comedy beats and locations, right? It's got the cafeteria scene with like looking for a place to sit with the tray. It's got
a smoking patio.
They have a smoking patio.
1980s, yeah.
Of course. They have a smoking patio. They have like they have like the class conflict. You can tell like Lindsay's family has a little bit more money than specifically like Busy Phillips and her crew. They seem a little bit like lower on the financial ladder. They have the homecoming dance.
Gym scene, homecoming dance.
Yep. They've got the dodgeball in the gym. Like, I can't tell if these feel so cliche to me because I've seen so much since this point, or if they are actually cliche already in 99. I am leaning towards the latter because of all the stuff I've already mentioned.
Yeah, I think so. I think the show knows that. Like, I really think it's trying to be like, we wanted to, who knows, but it's like we wanted to make a show that could have existed when those movies that we're talking about, Revenge of the Nerds and that kind of thing, were actually being made.
We have the cringy guidance counselor, right? Who is wants to be her friend, but also wants to be in charge. There's just so many classic / cliche moments in this. I don't know if we should talk about this here, but the music in this is very significant and very like purposefully chosen, and also why it wasn't on streaming again for a long time. Just like some of the other stuff we talked about. They had to work out so much with music rights but they did. So like this actually has pretty much all of the music that it originally had, including the theme song, the Pat Benatar.
Like that.
Yeah.
While we're talking music, there's something I know kind of verbatim from this show. This is a little bit of a side note, but there's a band I love, Dikembe. Randy's actually a New Jersey is the World member of the extended New Jersey is the World universe. And he's got a great band called Dikembe. And they have a song called Scotty Spliffin that opens with Jason Segel's like little monologue. These teachers want us to work, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And then Lindsay saying, hey, maybe I'll buy a clarinet.
Right.
It's into the song. So I've known that for kind of like years now.
Nice.
Go check out Dikembe. They're great.
Yeah. This was when it was canceled. It had its brief moment of people coming together to try to save it. A bunch of the fans pooled their money and put together like a 2-page ad in Variety. It's it wasn't pre-internet trying to save a show because we talked about My So-Called Life, but they decided to go the print route and put an ad in Variety.
But I guess didn't happen, huh?
Nope.
When did we finally get access? Probably DVDs, right? To those last 7 episodes or whatever, 16 episodes.
So actually right after it was canceled by NBC, right? Yes. Right after it was canceled by NBC, it was picked up by Fox Family, not for new episodes, but in syndication. And it was literally the next year. So in 2000, Fox Family started airing it again and aired those episodes with it. So pretty quickly afterwards, it was just the initial run on NBC where you couldn't see those 5 episodes.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
wow.
And it was the 3 episodes. So it was like, it's a little confusing, but basically after 12 of the 18 were aired, the series was canceled. And so they continued to air some of those, but 3 were not shown because of content.
Gotcha.
Kim Kelly's My Friend, Dead Dogs and Gym Teachers, and Noshing and Moshing. Those weren't aired at all.
Okay.
But they were shown on Fox Family the next year.
I see.
So I think that is why it started to become more of a cult classic. It's similar to when MTV started airing My So-Called Life after it got canceled. It was a chance for it to reach its audience again in a different time slot, a different network, all of that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Should we talk about Eli?
Why? It's 1999. What are we doing?
I mean, like...
And they think it's okay because they play him sweet.
Yes.
That he's not the, like...
And Lindsay, the reason that they use him is so that Lindsay looks like a good person who is, like, trying to defend him. And, you know, just like she's defending her brother from these bullies. But... I just didn't need it. It didn't do anything for me. It didn't do anything for the plot. I don't think. Like, what was the... I know. It really rang a bad note for me. I was like, this is not... I mean, I know it's the time, but even then, it's a... You know what it is? It's another cliche. It's another crutch. It's like another Revenge of the Nerds style bro comedy, like, classic beat, right? And they're trying to do something cool with it by making her be, like, nice to him and making us root for him. The only thing, and again, I didn't need it, but it's like, there are other ways to show Lindsay being, like I said, when she was misguided earlier, this is what I'm talking about, where the way that, like, she goes in to defend him and actually ends up doing more harm than good, like, physical and emotional to this kid, is like, you know, there's something to be said there. But again, there are so many other ways to do that don't rely on this really kind of, like, lazy stereotype of the, like, gentle, like, when he's yelling that he's not, you know, like, he's special. And it's like, can we not? There's just no need for it. No, I know. It really, I texted you immediately. I was like, oh no, I forgot about this. I was genuinely, like, shocked to see that. Maybe I shouldn't have been. Yeah. But it's like, we should have known better well before. Yes. But by 99, we know better. And these guys, I feel like, should have known better. Yeah. But, like, Paul Feig and Judd Apatow by 99 should have known better. But clearly they didn't. I mean, like, if you look at some of their movies that came after this, or some of Judd's movies that came after this, there's a blind spot or two for... That's, like, true. Well, the other thing that is really, like, tired to me is how... And again, some of this is where I go, where I'm like, yeah, but so what? Where it's, like, the stuff that feels... real, where it's like everything is like, don't be a girl, like, there's all that, like, what are you on your period, homophobia stuff and, like, misogynist stuff and blah blah blah. Like, I know, like, I was in school, I know that's, like, but so what? Like, okay, so it sounds real, like, I don't know, it wasn't necessary. And it just makes the kid a joke. Like, and an object that she can, like, try to comfort later and be like, look, I'm a good person. You know, I'm dancing with him. Like, he doesn't have anything to do other than be a football for them to toss around. Exactly. You know, it's not great. Yeah. And I think I think even if the show didn't have a lot of the other things that I'm, like, ambivalent about, I think it would have had a really hard time coming back from that for me. Like, I don't know. A lot of people did, apparently, because in that, right after that scene where he breaks his arm is when the drop off came, when people turned it off. It's so, I mean, I think, like, I probably would have been done with it at that point if we didn't have to talk about it today. Yeah. I know. He's only in 2 episodes, so I think he shows up one more time and then it's even over. Better. I know, exactly. But, like, at least we don't have to watch it if we keep watching it. I don't know. Man, that is something else that they're like, well, we're done with that. Yeah. He doesn't get to have, like, a character at all. No. Man, a football for them to toss around is exactly right. Like, yeah. It's such a bummer. Yeah. It really is. And he says, like, so Paul Feig, when he's talking about this, says that it was the accumulation of many, many years of watching high school shows and movies and just feeling so alienated by them because they always tended to be about the cool kids or people that were so cool with adult things like dating and sex and all that. I don't know that that's true. I feel like there were things that dealt with that.
I think it's just 90210 is the only one that really.
Yeah. I mean, this is post like the teen show boom also. Like it kind of the Dawson's Creek and the.
Yeah, but Dawson's Creek isn't that either. Dawson is a big film nerd. Joey's like a brain. Like Pacey's an absolute, like those kids are not cool and they weren't cool.
But it's a different kind of not
universe.
Cool, maybe. Like I'm just arguing this. I don't know, but that maybe it's like the alienated burnout kid that he was relating to more. Yeah. But yeah.
It's definitely less like clean cut than a lot of, because even like Beverly Hills 90210, there's no like, yeah.
Yeah. I want so badly for it to be something a little bit more than it is. Yeah. Again, like My So-Called Life, there were a bunch of like what ifs, like storylines that might have happened if it had another season, and a lot of conversation about how it might have benefited from not having a second season. We talked about how like some of the writers' ideas for My So-Called Life season 2 were not so great. So in an interview with Judd Apatow from the Washington Post, he said about some storylines that never happened. Paul and I talked a lot about how the family would handle Lindsay coming back from traveling around to Grateful Dead shows. Spoiler alert, that's what she ends up doing in the last episode.
Oh, okay.
She and Kim go follow the dead. There's a lot of talk about what families did when their kids had addiction problems back then. We were also aware the kids were growing really fast, thought it would change their relationships. This, I think, I don't know that I'm actually interested in this, but it's mildly interesting. He says we were kicking around ideas about what happens to the geeks when John Daly gets tall and incredibly handsome and suddenly the popular kids want to hang out with him more. Like that's a a dynamic.
Yeah. Okay.
There were storylines about Bill, Martin Starr's character's mom marrying the gym teacher and him getting talked into being on the basketball team after he suddenly gets really tall and strong. Like, there's these moments when the little nerdy kids suddenly like hit puberty and get like look like different people immediately after. Like that's mildly interesting to me, but
yeah, and depending on how they handled it, I could see that being compelling. Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm doing a lot of judging based on the very first episode of a show that only got one season. So. Yeah. So we're 3 episodes into this little run. We've got a few more high school teen shows to watch.
Yes.
It's funny to me. I think these shows, because like we talk about Beverly Hills as the like kind of like text, right? Isn't that what they call it?
Yeah.
For these? But it's more like 90210 is like the TV version of a lot of teen movies. Because there aren't a ton of shows that are Beverly Hills 90210. Like My So-Called Life and Freaks and Geeks and all of these shows that are acting like a response to a deluge.
Right.
And it's not, I'm thinking about it now, it's not really the case.
I think it's just that 90210 had such a grip on society. Like it was everywhere and everyone was watching it. And it went on for so long. Like it was so many seasons, 290 something episodes, we said.
That's so crazy.
So it was everywhere.
Yeah. Because even like, I didn't watch Party of Five. I know that's more of a family drama, but still, I think that has more in common with like My So-Called Life than Beverly Hills 90210.
Well, because 90210 has that soap opera edge to it. It has that nighttime soap that like it has more in common with like Dynasty and Knots Landing than it does Party of Five, but for sure.
It's funny that we group all these shows together, but it's really like One Tree Hill, Dawson's Creek, The OC. I think they probably have more in common than any of these other shows do with one another. I don't know.
I mean, My So-Called Life and Freaks and Geeks on the surface have a lot in common. Mm-hmm. I think it's more tone is where we start to pick those two apart. Mm-hmm. But like the ideas behind it, a lot of it is follows similar beats and just handles them super differently. Mm-hmm. But yeah, next week. How excited are you?
What are we doing next week?
Why don't you tell us, since it's like the most important thing in your life that you named your dog after?
I know I say things. I've said it about X-Files. Yeah. I've said it about Lost. I've said it about so many movies. But this is up there.
It sounds to me like it is to you what My So-Called Life was to me. In terms of the emotional connection to it.
Right. Which is so funny because it is so different. It's also like, I understand watching My So-Called Life, how you watched that show and you were like, oh, there I am. Mm-hmm. Not the case with Dawson's Creek for me.
Okay.
It just is this little ball of like, we'll talk about it next week, but we're headed to the creek.
I'm excited. I have no real context for this show. I mean, I know about it, obviously. I don't live in a hole, but I don't think I've ever seen a full episode. I know of it through the culture. I think one of the reasons I missed Freaks and Geeks in the moment was because I was older than I would have naturally been to want to watch it. I was like out of college, I think, in 99. Yeah, that's when I graduated. And so 98. I was like more... Oh, no, I'm talking about Freaks and Geeks.
Oh, Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like working and living in the city. And, you know, when did Sex and the City come out? Because that was more where I was at.
No clue.
Sex and the City came out in 96. No, premiered in 98. The book that it was based on came out in 96. So Sex and the City came out. So this is actually an interesting parallel because 98 was Dawson's Creek for you and actually probably Sex and the City for me because I had moved out of Jersey and I was about to move out of Jersey and was like getting ready to have my like career girl 20s in New York, working in an office and hanging out with my girlfriends and having bad dates.
Yeah. And it aired the first episode the day before I turned 12. So
wow.
It was the exact right. It was like, oh, this is what high school will be, you know?
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit last week about the start of the WB.
Yes.
And how maybe some of these other shows, like maybe My So-Called Life would have had a better shot if it had aired on network, the WB, because Dawson's Creek, Buffy, and Seventh Heaven were like the big shows that launched on that network, and all three were like huge hits at the time. And were, you know,
it was a better home for it. Like people knew to go to that channel for that kind of thing. And I think something like My So-Called Life could have fit there really well.
Totally. And it was everything.
What is the exact date that it came out? Dawson's Creek?
January 20th, 1998. And
okay.
Its last episode was like May of 2003, which was the end of my junior year of high school. And so, I mean, it was...
Yeah, perfect timing.
You know, yeah. And
I was just asking because Sex and the City came out June 6th, 1998. So, like, 6 months later.
And I had friends who were my age and who loved Sex and the City, but it just is not... It's
not a connection. No, I know. Yeah. For me, it just was the time of my life that this was all happening during...
It's also, you know what else it is for me? We'll talk about it next week, but it's Kevin Williamson, so he's the Scream guy too. And it's a TV show that loves movies, and I really like that.
That
really
makes
to me.
That makes sense. That would be something you would connect with.
There's like we also said last week, if we do some Halloween episodes, they have two that are just so good. They're so fun. It's the best. I mean, again, like you said, I literally named my dog Pacey Witter.
Yes.
If you're wondering if I'm Team Dawson or Team Pacey, like that's all you need to know. I've never had a dog named Dawson, and I never will.
Yeah, I think, you know, a big part of it may just be that I'm not remotely attracted to James Van Der Beek, and so
neither am I. Nobody is.
Him leading a show was not going to make me want to watch it.
It's called Dawson's Creek, but it's Pacey's Creek. It's been Pacey's Creek the whole time, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it.
Okay. Well, I'm excited because it's something that is has been in the periphery of my vision for a million years that I've never engaged with.
And it got 6 seasons. That's another show that got to do a lot, and they go off to college, and it's a show you get to grow with. And I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about it.
I can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it'll be good. It'll be good.
If you're somebody who has never watched the show before, I think the music is still screwed. It's one of those shows where it's like everybody knows I Don't Want to Wait as the theme song for that show. And I don't think it is on streaming. I think it's a different theme song, unless they've since reacquired the rights or something. But it's also a show that had a fantastic soundtrack and got really screwed when streaming.
That happened to so many things from that time period.
And it's such a bummer because it's so important for the tone of these shows.
Yeah.
But I'll do some research between now and next week and we'll find out if that's still the case.
Okay. Well, it is watchable on the CW for free, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know the CW had a website, but they do. And you can watch it there. It doesn't look like it costs anything.
There you go.
Yeah. It's free with ads.
That's good to know. They should. I wish there were a way for them to air the original ads and still make money. That would
be so fun.
I would love.
I love a vintage run of ads.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
All right. Well, again, the few times we've watched something and I won't say not liked and not loved it, I'm still glad that we do it. I think it's
part of the conversation.
Exactly.
I think we're doing this partly because the idea of a pilot is interesting, and also the shows that grabbed us and how that pilot worked and didn't work. And so I'm glad we did it too. Also because I always think of it as this show that got away, a show that I should like. I often have it on my to watch on a day where I've got nothing else list, and I never do. And now I'm remembering why. So yeah.
So you can bump Dawson's Creek up the list now.
Sure. I mean, I might watch more episodes of this because I do remember it getting better, but it's not something that I'm rushing back to. With My So-Called Life, the reason I didn't continue to rewatch it after last week is because it's too emotional for me. Mm-hmm. This is the opposite. I'm having trouble connecting with it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So where can they find us?
Oh, we're at WatchersPodNJ on Instagram, WatchersPodNJ at Gmail. Where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram at Jodie_Mim, JODIE_MIM. I am still posting photos of a very cute calico cat that I am taking care of.
She's very good.
Yes.
I'm at AQAndreaQ on Instagram. And that's it. We will see you where? Where are we going to see them, Andrea? Massachusetts. I don't think I knew it was in Massachusetts. Because it was filmed in it's Capeside, Mass. It's a fictional town. Wow, I'm going to learn so much next week. It was filmed in Massachusetts, but primarily North Carolina. Okay. I think I associated it more with the South. Yeah, I did a pilgrimage, and I'll be able to tell you all about it. So I have to do no research next week. I'm just going to watch the episode, and you're going to tell me everything. You got it. Oh, I can't wait. Buckle up. All right. You can't wait, and you don't want to wait. I don't want to. Oh, God. Okay, bye. Goodbye, everybody.